Welcome, everybody. This is Show and Tell number 7 in a never-ending series. And we've got something really cool in store for you for the next one, but let's talk about announcements first. So the Railroad Hobby Show is canceled. All of you must know that by now. It was a tough decision. The board, all of us made about, about 3 weeks ago, I guess. But there will be a virtual Railroad Hobby Show, the VRRHS, on that same weekend. And that's the first of a themed multiple virtual train shows, guys. And we'll have more to say about that. But it will include links to exhibitors' websites, highlighting show specials. So there'll be all kinds of stuff that they're going to be offering, I suspect, at a discount. There'll be all kinds of clinics online, videos, live stream, kickoffs, interviews, et cetera, and so much more. So watch for the details. The outline, guys, is already in really good shape. And so we're well on their way. It's actually, I was such a mess the week we canceled, but this has gotten me really excited because so many people want to help us. So watch for more details. Usually what we do is put the show map and everything out the first weekend in December, which explains who, what, where, when everybody will be there. We're going to do the same thing. So the first weekend in December, we're going to have everything about the first virtual hobby show, Railroad Hobby Show out there. So
they are evidently going to have an O-scale display at Webster's Union Station.
Yeah, I guess. Now, guys, so I just muted all the lines. Some of you are still live, so we can hear in the background, but no worries. I just muted everybody. So what I will do is I will unmute the individual speakers when we get to it. So we'll go from there. Now, the next show and tell. John Peters, who's on the line. Thank you, John. It was a brilliant idea. So, guys, and John was saying, look, a lot of us want to present. We don't know how to work this. We don't want to work this. We would like to just send you a few pictures. You unmute our line, and we'll talk to you about what we've been doing. And so I want to see, guys, at least 10, 15, 20 people that want to speak at the December show and tell. Okay? It's the speed dating of show and tell. All right, so you know how you're sitting down at the table. You got 2 minutes to introduce yourself to the person you're interested in possibly dating, and you move on to the next table. That's what we're doing here. So send me a couple of pictures. I'll tee up the whole thing. You got to let me know, what you want to talk about in an email. So send it to this email address. And thanks, Johnny. This is a great idea. I love it. So, guys, this is your chance. Send me a couple pictures and just talk about them for 2 minutes. And that's it, or 2 or 5 or whatever. I'd probably kill you at 5 minutes, but it really depends on how many people. So just send me any couple of pictures of a favorite building, a shot you've taken last week when you were out rail fanning, whatever. But I want to see a lot of stuff. Let's step it up a notch and get more people. Okay. Although I like this format, it gets better. But let's try this. Let's try this and see how this goes. Maybe we'll insert a speed dating every 3rd or 4th or 5th show and tell. We'll see how that goes. All right. So that's what we're talking about here, guys. So our first speaker, alphabetically, as we've been doing this, so as not to hurt any feelings. Our first speaker, guys, is Gary Muncie, and Gary will tell you all about rail fanning on the job. And really, guys, and you've read the write-up, but Gary was retired as a dispatcher, and I'll let him explain a little bit more about that. But he, half an hour later, took a job to shuttle crews around. So interesting stuff. So, Gary, your line is live already, Gary. Are you there?
I am here. It was more like 4 days later. Yeah.
No, that's okay. So it was 4 days, not a half an hour. I'm making you the presenter, Gary. So you go ahead and accept, and you should be in good shape. And everybody else, please remember to mute your line, or at least keep the talk down. I can see you, Gary. So you're set to go.
Hold on a minute. I think I just hit the wrong button. We still good?
Yeah, you're good. I can see you.
We good right now?
Yep. Just start.
Can you see the screen there?
Yep. And start the slideshow, and you're going to be great.
Yep. Okay. So as John said, I retired Coming up on my 3-year mark, November 30th. So it was on November 30th, 2017, I retired from train dispatching for Pan Am Railway, Springfield Terminal, Guilford, whatever you want to call it. And 4 days later, I started driving for the taxi service, the livery service that transports the Pan Am rail crews.
Gary, could you start your PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah, Gare, all the way over
wait
where
a
it says
minute.
from beginning. Slideshow. See the yep.
There we go. I always do
There.
this, okay?
There
There
you
we
go.
go.
There you go.
All right. So here I am. This is 2 weeks before I retired. I'm working the main central desk, also known as District 1. I always enjoyed working District 1 because it's a lot of signal territory and non-signal territory. I always enjoyed working that. So this is 2 weeks before I retired. So all my photos were taken with my iPhone version 7. I didn't want to look too conspicuous on the job while, okay, wait a minute here. Where are we going here? I didn't touch that. Hold on a second. No, I'm going backwards here.
Left,
All right, I'm just going to
yeah.
skip up here.
Left arrow get you back, Gare.
What's that?
Left arrow.
Oh, yeah, there it is. I see it down there. Yep. I see it down there. Let's go back a couple of, let me find the arrow. Okay, so anyway, I took all the pictures with the iPhone 7. Didn't want to look too conspicuous with my big Canon camera carrying around. This is East Deerfield Yard at sunrise. I don't remember the dates, but this is a combination of NS power and some Pan Am XCSX power at the Deerfield engine facility. So the part-time job is to transport the crews for Pan Am and the Providence and Worcester from the trains, the yards, the hotels. We do not do the Pan Am, the Providence and Worcester Railroad anymore. So it's just strictly Pan Am. So here's a map. This is Pan Am Railway's map of the line. They operate in all the New England states except Rhode Island, and they operate in Eastern New York. So I've included photos from each of the state. So here's Rigby Yard, South Portland, Maine. I had to go up there one morning to pick up a crew all the way to Portland from Air. I usually work out of Air Yard. And so one morning I had to go up to Portland. Great, I'll take some pictures there. So, all right, this is Manchester, New Hampshire. This is the NA1 local right next to the ballpark in Manchester. White River Junction, Vermont. I was covering East Deerfield one day. I bounce around. I don't mind. I like it. You know, if the boss wants me to go to Deerfield or wants me to go to New York, I'll go to New York. So this was 2018, I believe, November. And they ran the OCS train on the Conn River line from Plainville, Connecticut, all the way to White River Junction, Vermont. So they had to run these GP40-2s because of the cab signal equipment. They couldn't run the typical PAR1 and PAR2 on the Conn River line. Here we are at Lowell, Massachusetts, POAY. This is at Meadowcroft Street in Lowell. Loaded grain train at Rotterdam Junction, New York. This is one of the weekends I went out and covered the weekend shift out there. And this is like 7 o'clock on Saturday morning. I had to go out there and pick up a crew. So the loaded grain train was parked there waiting for a crew. Plainville, Connecticut. I had to go down and pick up this was a fun morning. I was at Air and got the call to go to Plainville, Connecticut in a snowstorm. Pick up one crew member and taxi him all the way back to Air. That was a fun morning. Sunrise, January 1st, 2018. That was actually the first holiday. Oh, here we go again, this stupid thing. We actually, I was the only one there at Air, and there was no crews there. But I got paid anyway, so I just stuck around. More photos at Air. Yep. All right, East Deerfield. I got to stop this. Hold on a minute. This is going by itself again here. All right. All right, back. I saw that earlier. Okay, East Deerfield, Massachusetts. That's the hump switcher working with the leased slug set. There it is again. I guess they lease that from a leasing company to work the hump. Half the time the slug's out of service. And this is a whoopsie-doo, split a switch here on the hump at East Deerfield.
How long did that hold them up, Gary?
Oh, geez, maybe 2 or 3 hours.
Ouch.
So,
yeah.
Another sunny day shot of the slug. Okay, here we're recrewing at Athol, what we call tiders. This is actually the recrew taking place. Let me go back here. I don't know why my slideshow is going crazy like this. Here we go.
Have you got CSX equipment in that one?
Yeah, well, it's the ex-CSX equipment. It's all Pan Am now, but loaded auto rack train. They don't run the auto rack trains anymore, but this is at Wachusett, just west of Pittsburgh. This was the Pittsburgh local had to go out to Royalston. I took a crew out there to recrew it. They tied up from the night before. I gotta find a way to pause this. All right, I'm gonna pause. There we go. Hopefully I can just do it with the arrows. This is some power out at Rotterdam Junction. It's actually Scotia on the Rotterdam branch. This power, I think, was going to either Helm Leasing or Larry's Truck and Electric. But basically, it's these two units were leaving the Guilford property, hence no number boards. Irving, Mass. Phil Johnson should recognize this spot just outside the Boxcar Restaurant. Pause on this again here. All right, Air, Massachusetts. That's one of the Pan Am painted C40-8s moving some intermodal equipment around. The foggy morning at Air. Some of the Norfolk Southern power that came in on the intermodal train, 22K.
That's a nice shot, Gary.
Thank you. I don't know if I can just get this thing to pause again. All right, here we go with the purple nose. If anybody's been photographing any Pan Am stuff, somebody's been painting the noses of some of these engines, these XCS engines. There's pink noses, there's blue noses, white noses. Well, this is the purple nose on the power up at Concord, New Hampshire. This is the power that handled that New England Southern military train back north that they ran a couple years ago. All right, this is the Fitchburg local on the Greenville branch just out of Air. I qualified to dispatch the line. It's just a running track, industrial track. I never had the opportunity to ride the line, but guess who did? My son, Gary Jr., who's also on the call tonight, got to ride that branch line from West Groton to Air when he was like 9 or 10 years old. Here's a local again behind Dunkin' Donuts on the Greenville branch. I think I skipped over one. Oh, all right. Fitchburg Yard, that's the empty grain train that's been parked there. They usually split the grain train up into two halves. It's like 110 cars, I believe, when it comes to us from Rotterdam Junction. And they split the train in half, usually at Fitchburg or Air, and they take 50 some odd cars up to the grain mill up in Littleton, dump the first half, bring the empties to Fitchburg usually, and then they stage the whole train and put it back together for the trip west. Shirley, Mass. This is actually on my way home we were keeping some of the cars in Lunenburg. So I'm on my way back to Lunenburg to drop the car off at the end of my shift. I figured I'd catch the intermodal train departing Air going through Shirley westbound. I actually delivered the conductor to the head of this train in Air. Some more Pan Am Power painted. This is one of the B40s at East Deerfield. Oh, here's a fun one. I can't remember the winter, but this is a real nasty Monday morning snowstorm. Ice, snow, trees down. This was a 380. This was the last remaining high hood GP40. The crew this is a train coming from Portland to Air. Excuse me. Oh my gosh, this trip lasted forever because they kept coming to down trees, and Barica, the main office, just kept telling them to plow through it. Basically, they bashed out number boards, bent handrails, and this is when I picked up the crew at Plastow, New Hampshire, when they ran out of time. This is at what they call Wagon Wheel in Littleton, between just east of Air. The big grain mill in Littleton is just off to my right. This is one of the auto rack trains. The auto facility is just behind the autos on the left, where they spot the loaded autos. This is kind of a neat shot. This was one of the Sunday morning slurry trains, and this is the first time I got all three of the then painted C40-8s and Pan Am all together. So this is a Sunday morning that I was working. Looks like the loaded grain train, first half at Fitchburg. I just delivered a crew to it that morning. And I like to take some pictures of the crews. I just dropped off this engineer, Charlie Carter, to his train. Charlie's a great guy from California. I think he's Native American. The sun wasn't the greatest on the shot, so I made it into black and white. Here we are at Lowell, Mass. School Street is what we call it in Lowell. We quite often recrew trains there. Mixture of Pan Am. This would be what's called the BFED, that outlawed at the new Greenfield station on the Conn River line in Greenfield. I was covering Deerfield that day. I took the crew up to the train that morning. This is the 16R freight train, the NS freight train that operates between Enola, Pennsylvania and East Deerfield, Mass. He's arriving East Deerfield Yard. I took the photo from inside the yard office. Recrew out on the main line at Air, at the Air Tower, as I call it, Air Tower. All right, engineer Mark Humphrey, a great friend of mine. I've known Mark my whole career. Great guy. Recrewing at the shop, Billerica shop. Where I worked was just behind the freight cars, a few hundred yards in behind the trees. That was the Billerica office. This is the New Hampshire route main line here to Lowell, and he's actually on the shop lead. So now we got some visitors and heritage units, so plenty of that. This was one of the auto rack trains in Gardner, one of the snowstorms. I took a crew up to recrew. BNSF power parked at Air. All this power would have come in on the intermodal trains. Now here's an odd duck. NS got this right in service. They replaced the cab and part of the sheet metal behind the cab and just put it right back in service without painting the head in. And several times we got these BNSF Grinstein Green SD70 Max, as they called them. This was the executive paint scheme they were applying to these units prior to the BNSF merger. This is a GMTX GATX leasing SD60 that was on the train. Union Pacific Power. I believe that they took this on the day that the big boy was making its maiden run out in Utah. So I think I put on Facebook that I didn't have to go all the way to Utah to see Union Pacific. I just waited at I just worked the day at Air and got it at Air. This would be on the 23K train ready to leave Air. Engineer Hank Parkinson, another good friend of mine. We even got some CN power. And if anybody ever read about this special train, this is something that Pan Am and the CMQ, Central Maine and Quebec Railroad ran jointly along with the Vermont Railway. They made a big loop out of Waterville up to Northern Maine Junction, across into Canada, and back down the VTR, Vermont Railway. Basically, they kept the CMQ engine right on the train at East Deerfield. So I shot this at East Deerfield.
We've been seeing a lot of CMQ units up here in Canada because the Canadian Pacific has just recently bought out the CMQ.
This is an empty auto rack train. This, whoops, let me go back here again. Let me pause. I think I have to pause it here. Empty auto rack train at Hoosick Tunnel Station Road. This is just east of the Hoosick Tunnel between Soapstone and East Portal Interlocking. Here we have the BRIC, the Norfolk Southern Geometry Train Test Unit. They tied it up. It comes across the Pan Am Southern section of the railroad. They tied up at the old Ford yard in between Air and Littleton. So again, I had to go pick up the crew and take them to the hotel. It's a research car nicknamed the BRIC. And that's the engineer. Another good friend of mine, Hal Raven, and that'll bring up another photo show sometime. And of course, our president Alco Joe is listening as well, and he's met Hal. Hal gave us a great tour of his private stash of Alco locomotives out in New York. That'll be the subject of another show. CP powered East Deerfield on the 16R train. More Union Pacific powered Air. This is down in Worcester, Greendale. This is a train that was interchanged from CSX to Pan Am. These two units, lease units, are headed to the CMQ railroad back when, I think it was early 2019 when they were still in operation. They were leasing these two units, and these are being interchanged for Pan Am to handle the Northern Maine Junction. Night shot at Air of the Interstate Heritage Unit. Combination of just existing light and my headlights. This is one of the what do you call it? DC to AC conversion units that showed up. One of the yellow main or yellow nose engines. They have different colors on the some of those special converted units. The Conrail Heritage Unit. Yeah, it was mid train, but at least I got it. Penn Central Heritage Unit. Monongahela Heritage Unit. That was always good about working here. I didn't have to travel too far to get these heritage units when they would just show up on the day I worked anyway. Is the Illinois Terminal Heritage Unit. The Virginian. You've seen this in the newsletter. Phil Johnson has caught this several times through Irving. And the Reading Heritage Unit. That was the latest one I caught. Not the greatest shot, but you take what you can get. So now we're working the night shift. Yes, I've worked the night shift too. Here's a wintry morning at air. This was a recrew of a Pan Am crew going down to bring the CSX train up to air from Worcester. Night shot back at shop interlocking in Billerica. Another night shot at air. It's like maybe 3 o'clock in the morning, 3, 4 in the morning. Yes, I like heavy equipment too, as some of you guys know. So I actually shot this through the chain link fence at Lawrence, Mass. This is basically just street lights and ambient light of one of the rail cranes that they own. This was just a few weeks ago at East Deerfield, the hump switcher at the crew trailer. Watching the piggyback unloader work, or loader working at air yard. The air trailer is just right behind me where the crews report. So to access the air trailer, I got to drive right through the piggyback yard. Conductor Bamford, he's checking his car numbers in his train at Greendale as the train rolls by. Basically, I had to stay with him and give him a ride to the head end after he was done. This ordeal took maybe an hour and a half. Again, I guess around 3 in the morning. Little night ambient lighted air. When we did transport the P&W crews, here's a couple of my shots from the P&W. This is Plainfield, Connecticut. One day I had to take a crew down to Groton, Connecticut. This is right just north of the corridor main line, right by the Groton Tower. Groton Tower is right behind me. Early morning at Plainfield, Connecticut. Putnam, Connecticut. This had to drive all the way down from air to Putnam, Connecticut, just to pick a crew up and take them 10 miles to Plainfield. So let's talk about the neighbors, the MBTA. They're the neighbors at air. They were redoing what they call the Grand Junction running track in Boston, which actually connects the north and south sides. They usually use it for equipment moves. CSX was using it to service the produce terminals in Everett. So while they were rebuilding the bridges, the MBTA was running detour trains down the Worcester main line to shuttle equipment between the north side and the south side. So this is one of the shuttle trains at the west end of Air Yard. And Pan Am meets MBTA at air. All right. Everybody knows about the office car special, the OCS. I got to see it plenty of times because I picked up the crews many a times. So this morning I picked up the crew. I can't remember what hotel. I think they were staying up in Woburn at a hotel, and I had to deliver them down to Boston Engine Terminal in Somerville. So the big Boston Engine Terminal, the MBTA shop, is right to my left. Again, that's the train at White River Junction that I photographed. You saw the picture earlier. Picture of the business car, the 100. This is one of the trips a couple winters ago where they tied up in the old Ford yard at air. That was the sleeper that they just purchased a couple years ago from CSX. Um, they weren't going to name it the 103 because basically you have the business car 100, then you have the 101, which is the next car after that. The dome car is the 102. What's the next number? 103. At first, they balked about naming the car 103 because the relationship of that number to the Lockerbie, Scotland bombing that took down Pan Am Airways. But they eventually did repaint the car. They renamed it Sid Culliford, who was the vice president of transportation for the longest time at Guilford Pan Am, and they did number it 103. And here we are in the hill yard. They're actually wiring the train. This is the hill yard there. They're actually wiring the train to get ready to go east. Down at Greendale and Worcester. This is my last shot that I took of the OCS. This is the actual last trip it ran. Just a few weeks ago. This is in Westminster, eastbound. Here's a shot of the rear car. Everybody shoots the head end, but they don't shoot the rear end. The rear end is just as nice. So that's the business car 100. So what's it like inside the cars? Well, here's inside the business car 101. That's the counter. I guess the lounge car counter. I guess you'd call it lunch counter in the 101. And that's the dining area in the business car 100. So, in addition to being able to take pictures on the job, rail fanning on the job, sometimes I'd bring the car home for lunch. So here's one of the cars in my driveway. I live in Pepperell, not far from Nashua Yard, not far from Lowell, not far from here. So they don't mind if I take the car home. So I come home for lunch and I work on the railroad. What could be better? So question is this the end? All right. We're going to have to wait and see, because as some of you people have seen already in Facebook and whatever, is CSX going to be the new owner? That's all I got, John.
All right. As I watch this, I'm going to just head back to my screen. Thank you, Gary. Some of these photos that we all have taken, because some of them are gorgeous. The one with the sun peering through the steps and that one I commented on. I think if we all took our best shots and blew them up to decent size, 15 by 24 or something, and framed them, we could have one heck of an art show, a railroad art show. It's just amazing to me to see some of the shots that some of you guys come up with. And Phil, you're another one. Gary, you've got some great shots. I just love looking at them. Gary, thank you so much. That was really tremendous. So guys, next, who's next? Oh, me. So I finally get to go next. And let me show you what we're going to talk about tonight. We're talking about this. This is Two John's Brewery. And this is what it looks like in place. I just took that not too long ago, about a week ago, at Dick Joyce's house. And if any of you have ever operated at Dick Joyce's house, it's one of my favorite places to go. I have many, but this is one of them, because this very comfortably holds 20 to 24 people operating trains simultaneously. This is up in Green Haven, guys. It's the upper level. And you can see a little bit of the transfer tables, and we'll talk more about that as we go. And I'll show you actually how we built this whole thing. But what started all of this was us as we were leaving, and we said, what are we going to do up at that hill? And I said, wouldn't it be cool if we had some sort of operation, something that worked? And Bud Sharrow actually said, there's a Coors brewery out in Colorado that has working transfer tables. And he said, there's an article in Model Craftsman magazine. I went back and looked and called them. They sent me the article for free. And what we're talking about is everything is indoors, guys. These transfer tables are actually indoors. And what it allows you to do is move a car out, pull it out of the way while not touching the other cars, because these cars get loaded 24/7, 365. It doesn't stop. And there's called the north side and the south side. So the north side and the south side, as we look at another couple of pages of the article, um, uh, I forget which has which, but on the north side, they have 10 transfer tables. On the other side, they have 11. And I may have gotten north-south mixed up, but it's like crazy. So when they're in motion, they actually beep and blink red on the wall as to which of the 10 or 11 transfer tables are moving. And there's other colors as well, depending on what's going on. And I'll show you how that all works on Dick Joyce's layout. So when I first started talking about it, John Bach happened to be there. And any of you that know John Bach is, he never met a challenge he couldn't overcome. And we said, we need to have some sort of transfer tables. And we told him, probably 2 or 3. That's all that we have room for. So 2 weeks later, he comes up with something that looks like this. Now, disregard my buildings. I already started building on there. But he comes up with this platform with 3 transfer tables built from slide drawers, sitting on the edge with Atlas girder bridge attached to each of them, and they slide out of the way. And if you look at these little dots right here, those are actually with a tool he made especially for that. It reaches in and actually adjusts where the stops are for the power so that these line up precisely. I don't think in 10 years we've ever had to change them. But what I started with from this, John brought this board with these working mechanisms, and I'll show you a little bit more as we go. But we started building this. So it's John Bach and me, and that's how we started the Two Johns Brewery. But we should have added Two Johns and Sudro because he came up with all the electronics at the end, which I'll show you. But what's happening here is I started with 3. I guess they were 3 champion meat packing companies from Cornerstone, I guess, right? So and what happened is I really lucked out because the side of one of these was exactly the side of one of the champion buildings. But I couldn't have spliced these things. You could see the splices right there now. But there's 1, 2, 3, 4. I couldn't have done it without a really nice bandsaw. And what I did is fabricated, much the way Tom Lowry has done, he fabricated a huge extra long fence. And you could take that piece of plastic that I copied from Tom on my bandsaw, and you just slide it. And I've got a really fine tooth bandsaw blade on a Shopsmith I've had for 45 years. And the nice thing about a Shopsmith is you could turn the speed way down because if you go too fast, it'll melt the plastic. But it provides for incredibly smooth cuts as long as you hold it up against the fence. And so to splice these things together, this is without any bracing yet, guys. So interesting that you could do that. And if you look at the next shot, there's a shot looking down. There's the little motor, just little 12-volt motors. And he had these little stops that you reach in with the tool, and it just adjusted when the contact broke from either pulling it out or pulling it in. That's why there were 2 per on the way out, on the way in, so the track would line up. You can see there's a feeder track that will eventually go here to feed these turntables, transfer tables. I'm sorry. So it allows you to see what's happening. So let me see if I think I have a bunch of these in a row. Yeah. So what happens is on the other end, in the office portion of this, there's the logic that Sudro built in, and it all runs off a 9-volt battery, guys. So what happens is, with some random logic as to when the cars are loaded, all of a sudden a beep goes off and a green light is lit saying, get this out of here. And so you have to pay attention because you could dial how fast they load in each of these three transfer tables. But when the transfer table is in motion, the red light that's over it, which you'll see later, actually blinks while this is beeping. And then when it's in a stationary position, they're red. So you picture a car right here. This moves forward. You come and get the car. The other car is still there, not being touched. You pull that away. You put a new one in. With this is the track that's here, and then you just slide it back in again. And that's what they do all day long, times 21 at the Coors Brewery. So it's crazy. So as we go through this very quickly, you can see it starts to take a better shape. And then I've got the back, and I wanted to have, because there was all kinds of roof details that came with each of these Champion meatpacking places. So I indented it a little bit just so I could have a roof here, so I could put some more stuff on the roof. And then just a couple of additional angles. And along the way, guys, you've got to brace it. So I built this all with probably, whatever, 10-ax and reinforced with super glue. And this is just scrap. I just put scraps in there to keep it all straight and overlap where I needed to as we kept going. And there were two tracks. This is the backside, the two tracks to service where they bring in grain and hops and whatever else they do while they're there. And it's starting to show. I put in the sides below, okay, and did the same thing with the splicing, easier because they have those overlap things that hide all your areas. More bracing, okay, and as we progress. Let me see, there's a shot. Yeah, I ran out of sides to the building. So you see this one spliced in here, already was painted. I actually had a portion of a meatpacking plant. I just ripped out the side because I needed it. I just ran out. There were so many building sides and building of the building, but I was going to repaint all of that my cement color paint anyway. So it allows us. There's a close up of it, and then now I started to weather. Guys, here's how I do. Brick. I spray with brick satin. It's just one of those spray cans out of the bottle. I don't own an airbrush, so I spray it all with that before I put the windows in. Obviously, the windows I just stuck down to on blue tape, painting tape, and held it down because it'll blow away with the cans of paint. I painted those all white, and then I painted 8 billion of these little things that hold the building together. Drive me crazy to do that, but whatever. Now, the other part of this, guys, is the transfer table on the real one was indoors, so I couldn't do anything. I had to make this open so you could see what was going on. So my engineering license ran amok. So I actually put a giant beam across here and then had cross beams come out with beams holding up the building, which makes, from an engineering standpoint, no sense at all. I think Alan Rice yelled at me for like a week. But then we started putting in the building, and these are all just parts of the building, the kits. So I had 3 of these, and I had some extra smaller parts, and I put it over there, as you'll see in a couple other photos. So we started and continued, and I wanted to have a couple shadow boxes, and those are all blocked off so you could see the kind of like the inside of the building and everything, so to give it some more detail, and it progressed. And then I have so many of these details that we hang around and put stuff in there, and there's some details of the loading dock and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the backside. These stairs are about twice as wide, but when I tried to glue them on there, they were bumping into the car, so I just put them in my my saw and cut them right down the middle, right in half. So if this were real life, you'd have to walk sideways to get out of the stairs, but that kind of thing. So we just added some more details. I painted. I had some of the. I think they were. They might have been. I forget. Campbell wooden barrels, guys, and I painted like 10 million of them silver to make it kind of look like beer kegs. Because I honestly think they ship packaged beer. I don't know if they do kegs out of Colorado. They probably do. They probably do a little of everything. So just more shots of the thing. And this is basically what it looked like just before I shipped it. And here's one, the final before delivery. This is an old cement plant from a Polar kit. It had that circular tower that came up. I just cut that off and put my own styrene on there. So this is like where they overlook the transfer table. The guy that sits in there is where he controls the transfer tables and all of that kind of stuff. So I think in the number of years that we've had it, it's worked really well. And I'm going to put Dick Joyce on the air, who's actually here to say a couple of things about that. Dick, are you there? Dick Joyce? Maybe not, but we'll see. Dick, if you can hear me, speak up when you're ready. If not, no worries. If you're having mic problems or something like that. But guys, here's the control panel for it. So it's a little bit out of an angle, but you can see how it's built into the side. This is all Sudro, and you could actually dial how often you want it to load. And when I'm trying to show it off, I turn these counterclockwise the whole way because the loading sequence is only for about 4 or 5 minutes, and then that moves the table. I have a video, but God darn it, the thing was sideways. But I'm going to show it anyway. So just tip your head, guys. Tip your head to the left, and you'll be able to see. So here's they're loading, and it slides the car out. So what would happen is the engine would come and get the car, not touching the other cars that are still being loaded, push the other car back in, the fresh new car that needs to be loaded, and then hit the switch.
John, we're not seeing the picture.
Oh, really? Oh, that's a pain.
Yep.
All right, so I won't even.
We're just seeing your arrow.
Yeah. Oh, that's a shame. All right. So, anyways, I just had it in motion, and I apologize for that. Thank you for letting me know. Let me know if you could see this picture, guys. Here's a
We've
picture.
got it all back, John. You're good.
Okay. Dick Joyce, are you there yet? I guess not. But guys, this.
I'm not sure he knows how to turn on his mic, John. I'm not with him.
Okay. No worries. He'll get a kick out of this anyway.
His
So, guys,
mic looks turned on anyway.
yeah, it
so.
does. It does. Yeah, but that's okay. We'll worry about that in a minute. But what I wanted you guys to see was the kind of fun we have. So I saw this in the local paper, and I grabbed it. Okay, and you can see what it says here. Well, this is what I came up with after I doctored it up. Okay, so that's what I came up with. Same thing. All I did was Photoshop the print away, and then I added my own line, same font as the original, and then I presented that and sent that out to a lot of the operators on his layout. So he was arrested for trespassing later. So that's the kind of stuff, and that's the kind of fun we have, guys. That's the kind of stuff, and the only reason why I show it to let you know that I miss that. I really miss that. So keep that all in mind when you have some photos that you want to, when we play speed dating. And I've got just a bunch. I'm going to go back to the beginning, guys, one more time so you can see the finished product. We had our own labels made. Clark Huber came up with and steamed off some, I forget what they were, some beer, and made his own labels and put them back on. So when we had a little ribbon cutting ceremony with a little miniature pair of scissors, we actually all had a bunch of beers that said To John's Brewery, and we've since added that sign with a bright white LED underneath it, and there's the extra building I had with a pipe going across the back. So this is a fun feature that really requires a dedicated operator because you've got to keep those beer cars loaded. So with that, guys, I am going to hand it over
That's
to.
normally Jimmy Mayo's job.
Yeah, that's true too. Mayo's been doing that for a long time now, hasn't he? So I am going to turn this over to Mike, guys, and let me just find Mike and make sure he's there. He is. So Mike, I'm gonna go ahead. Your line is unmuted, Mike. I am going to now just let me close these things. Let me go back and give you presentation rights if I can, and let me just get rid of this. And hold on, Mike. I got to find you again. There you are. So I am going to make you the presenter now, Mike. So, Mike, it should say accept at some point or whatever it says.
Share.
Share. Thank you. I knew it's one of those
Okay,
things.
it looks like I'm on.
Not yet. Yeah,
John,
yeah, yeah.
John, love that beer bottle on top of the factory. Love it.
Isn't that cool? That was from an airline shot. You know, you buy those shots at an airline. I don't know what's in it. I forget what was in it, but it was just colored water, I think. But yeah, that was cool. So we had to build a little rack for it and everything. I'm sorry, Mike, take it away.
Okay, I'd like to say that I got to operate that brewery once, and they must have said it at a high speed because it was a madhouse. After about 10 minutes, I was hopelessly gridlocked with cars coming and going, and but it was a lot of fun. It worked very well. I'd also like to point out that I did see the real one. I did go to the Coors Brewery only a few years ago, and I saw it in the distance. If I didn't know what it was, I wouldn't have known what it was, but it's kind of interesting. That was a nice little story, and I'd like to get back to Dick's house someday. But for now, we'll talk about stone walls. And this is sort of a tease for the convention that was supposed to have been held in Lowell this October and probably will be held next year in 2021 on Columbus Day, the NER convention. It's looking like there may be a vaccine up the road, and we may actually do that one. So let me talk about stone walls, and maybe I'll get you to want to go to my hands-on clinic. But anyway, that's just a picture to start with. And if I do this, it's going to load, and it'll give you the title. And this is just the title. I called it Stone Walls Unlimited, mostly because these stone walls are pretty unlimited. It's a modular system. You can make these walls probably as large as you want or as small as you want. And the whole idea was copied from Jack Work. Jack Work was one of my mentors when I was young. I liked what he did. I recently found out he was somebody after my own heart when I was a kid in junior high school. He would do projects where he kind of looked like he scrounged stuff from the house and had a couple of tools and built these beautiful models. And I found out much later that he was only a few years older than me, but he did a good job, and he was one of my scratch building heroes. And this appeared in the very first mainline modeler. So let me go on and talk about the stone walls. We can all reminisce forever now about the glory days of the hobby. But the first part is you have to make some stones. And these do not look like stones. These are actually formers to cast the stones. The height of these styrene strips would be the height you want the stones to be. The ones I'm showing you were scaled to be used either for O scale or G scale, and these cut stones tended to range anywhere from about 9 inches to 24 inches. So you kind of take your choice. These are about half inch, which works out for both scales. Another thing that I've used for mold release, and I read this years ago, is PAM. Like you spray everything with PAM, and it seems to release the stuff just fine. Always good to rob stuff from the kitchen when you can. And here's the stones being cast. Those little formers were made to rough and stick plaster in between, and you can see the plaster strips on the right. Now, when I say plaster, I tend to use a sealing plaster. The latest bag I got was from Home Depot, and it's like Acme Home sealing plaster, but it works just fine. And the nice thing about this is you get a 70-pound bag for about $10 as opposed to a 2-quart bag for $5. But it works just fine. The time to pull these out is there's a time when the plaster sets where it's warm, and then it gets cool. And you really want to do as much of this as you can when the plaster is cooling. If it starts to harden overnight, it really gets much like cutting real stone, and it gets much harder. But plaster's cheap, and there's a lot of waste, so no big deal. But definitely don't do it on the dining room table with the good rug and the good tablecloth. Do it with a lot of newspapers. Now, the trick to make the stones there's really 2 ways. One way is you would score around the 4 sides and then take knife blades and actually dig in and break it off, which gives you this jagged surface. Another way to do these is like this one, is to make a cut and snap it in half, and you get a broken face like this. Then you would trim the edge and you would make stones. It's really very simple. If you get a bad one, you don't use it. If there are little air holes, you fill them in, and you just keep going. You can repair them, and when you get a bunch of stones, you're all set. Just take your time. Don't forget it's only plaster. You've used about a nickel's worth of material, and it's not going to cost you a fortune. Now, so you don't go crazy, you don't make 500,000 stones. I made a master with about, I guess I tried to count them this morning. I guess there's about 30 or 40 of them, and you make a rubber mold. Now, that's enough stones that you can use these over and over and over again for all different walls. You can cut them and trim them and fit them. And it's very, very, very unusual that you'd ever get something that repeated itself. So that's a smart thing. You make a mold. Now, I tried to be fancy, and I bought this remelt and reuse stuff. I'm not sure where I got it, but it looked like it would be great. It's something that you put in a pot and you melt it, and then you dump it and it makes a mold. And then when you're done with the mold, you put, I think it was a microwave. You put it in the microwave and you put it back in the jar, and then you take the jar and melt it again. And I did it with some urethane castings, and it worked just fine. Worked just fine when I did these stones, but when I made the stones from the stones, the plaster just made the material disintegrate. I don't know why that happened. I don't know what the reaction was. Maybe it isn't as good for as many times as it was. But other than that, I tend to use the paint on latex that you would get like at Michael's or AC Moore. It's inexpensive. It's easy to brush on, and really, really, it's very difficult to make a mold badly. So have at it. Now, when the stones are made, you would build a fence. This is 5 courses high, which I did for no other reason than Jack Work used 5 courses. And you put these two, being very careful to measure them so they're parallel. Then you just start fitting stones in. Just cut them, trim them. It doesn't matter if there's a little airspace between them, but you just start making a piece. I put little markings on them because it's very easy to get disoriented with this. And that's one of your pieces. Then when you make the next piece, you take this piece and you make the stones match that piece. So they fit together. Now you see this is 2, this is 2, this is 1, this is going to be 3. 2, as you can see, would fit 3. This is starting to fit that one. And you can make as many as you want. Now, some of it depends on the size of the stones, the scale. I've made some in HO, and I tend to make about 7 or 8 of them. And that tends to take me about 9, 10 inches. I think that's a good amount. In O scale and G scale, you need fewer because the space is much different. The scales are much larger. And for that abutment I showed you, and for the stuff I've built with this, I actually made 4. And I've got that 1, 2, 3, 4. And here's the pieces going to be molded. Now, one thing I do often with these molds is I put a diagonal corner, and that helps me key the mold later. Because later on, when I pull the mold out and I pour the stones, I can remember which one is which and write on the back which is number 1, which is number 2, which is number 3. And that gets to be more confusing than you think. Now, one thing I probably forgot to tell you was when you get to the very end, you see here's number 4 and here's number 1. I didn't have a slide for this, and I should have, but number 1 will fit back here. So you can just keep repeating the whole module. Jack also made some where after 3 or 4 stones, there'd be another piece to start over, and after 7, so you could make them various lengths. But by casting the walls and staggering where they start and turning them upside down, it's quite easy to make very large walls without repetition. Here's some finished pieces put together. Here's my 4 pieces. Here's 4 of them put together, ready to go to 5. And that shows how the wall works. Now, it's very non-repetitive. I've never had any luck. Like the next one, like I said, if it starts here, you start here somewhere. You turn one upside down, and these walls can get very big very quickly. If they're a little bumpy, I could never get them perfect. You fill it in, you put a little spackle, you trim a little bit. It's only plaster. You break one, you fix it, you glue it back together. Now, here's a little thing about painting the walls. Here's a raw piece I did. I did this with this has like just a coat of earth-colored latex on it to keep it from sealing. Then the interesting thing is here's some washes put over it, black and brown washes, and it's painted gray. More washes and dry brushing. I use a series of washes and dry brushing, and what you might notice is that looking at these slides, any one of these, except for the first one, is pretty acceptable. So a smart thing to do is, if you like the way they look, stop. One of the things they try to ram down our heads in art school was, if you have something by accident and it works well, keep it. Don't say you have to change it because it wasn't what you planned. But there's the walls. Now, I'm going to show you another wall that I made the same way. That's the exact opposite. These are walls where you want to repeat. Now, it seems to me, and I can't really establish this too much historically, but I would say around the World War I era, many garages and gas stations and warehouses were built with these cinder blocks that had a textured face. Now, the neat thing about those were, and the picture doesn't do it justice, but every stone is identical and the pattern repeats. It does what they call wallpapering, and in the right angle of sun, it makes a fascinating repeat pattern, I think. But here's a big garage I built with stone walls, with cast stones. Now, in this case, you want every stone to look the same. So I actually ended up making two stones. I made a textured one, and I made a smooth one for the corners so the corners could interlock. It would be possible to have texture on the side, but that got to be pretty difficult and fit. So, and many buildings, in fact, the one I was copying, which basically was based on the gas station that still stands on Route 20 in Chester, Mass, used to be called Charlie's Garage. I don't know what it's called now. I remember in the old days, Bob Buck would go eat in the cafeteria there. I remember it was called Carms, but that's digressing. But anyway, this is one of the walls made. Now, since I thought this would collapse, Rod Guthrie was kind enough to cast all these pieces in polyurethane to make the wall strong enough for me to use. And here I am gluing the pieces over the frame to make one of the side walls with the windows. And I drew the drawings were actually done, scaled from the size of the stones, so the windows and doors would fit pretty closely. It came out pretty well that way. And here's how I would make the walls, the same thing. I would take two courses, and I made a mold of two courses of stone, being very careful to lap them, trying to do it as neatly as I can, which for me is usually a challenge. Now, here's, of course, that 6 stones high. I'm using squares and fake squares and triangles to keep it neat. And I ended up with modules of 8, sections of 8 that I cast and sections of 2. And I assembled the whole building from that. You can see a little bit here where everyone repeats. And to me, that's kind of an unusual pattern. One company that has copied this method is Sylvan Scale Models. They have several models with this textured cinder block, and they even sell sheeting of it too. And here's another stone wall. This is done the same way, but it's not done with the jigsaw puzzle pieces. These are the same types of stones, but it's individual stones. So I did cast them, but I had to make a lot of them. This is a curved arch trestle from my old curved arch bridge. It's not really a trestle, viaduct from my old HO railroad. And being curved and being arched, I figured the only way I could make a mold was to make the whole side. Once I made the whole side, I had the mold anyway. So these are just stone by stone glued in place, which is also possible and useful for small walls or for certain things. These stones can be used in a lot of places just loose. Steps, foundations for buildings, you glue a course across something, and then that's pretty much it. Now, Michael Tylick, and thank you for watching.
Michael,
And
thank you. I am going to take the screen back. That was great. I got to tell Mike Tylick's story, guys. Forgive me. but many years ago, I forget when it was, I rode with Mike Tylick from Massachusetts all the way to Cincinnati to the national convention, and we started talking about stuff I didn't want to hear about. It was political and all that kind of stuff, and so what I did, guys, is I started asking Mike how he built this, how he built that, because there's been a million articles, et cetera. So it took me about an hour to figure that out after we started, but I had like an 8 hour a day Mike Tylick clinic about how to do things, and it was some of the most fun
Poor
I've
John.
had. And I've never forgotten that, Michael. But I said, well, Mike, remember that article about so and so? And you would go, I said, how did you build that bridge? And I'd hear all about it so I just loved it, and I can listen to you all day, believe it or not.
And you're still talking to me, so that's good, John.
Yeah, it must be a good thing, right?
Thanks for having me.
But listen, Mike, thank you. You've done so much. You've been on the cover of Model River, I don't know how many times compared to others, and it's really greatly appreciated that you took the time to come here. So, guys, as you're looking at our screen one more time, don't forget the next one is December 9th at 7:30, and that's our speed dating show and tell. So I'm asking you, as much as I can, to almost say, come on, step up. Send me a couple of pictures, get on the air, tell us about the pictures, and then let's move on. 2 to 3, 4 minutes apiece, and then we'll just move on. Anybody, if there's some really cool, interesting things you want to talk about that you've done, that you've seen, that you want to learn more about, let us know. Send me the pictures at that address, and let's get them on the air and let's talk about it. So this will be the speed dating of show and tells, and with a little bit of a Christmas theme added in as well. Okay, so we'll see you on, again, December 9th. I'll be sending out the email announcements, etc. Also, watch for the announcements, guys, about what's going to happen at the Virtual Railroad Hobby Show. All right, the first of many that are going to be themed. So we're going to produce this first one. We're looking at a couple of things for live streaming software, et cetera, and then we're going to do more themed items as well. So we've got
You should
a lot of people backing us up with a lot of streaming videos, a lot of clinics, et cetera. And what was that? Is that?
John, you should call it the Big Virtual Railroad Hobby Show.
Yeah, like the old days. Big. Yeah. We actually had discussions with the Big E for using the word big in our name, but there you go. And there's a lot of great feedback. Bob Moore saying he discovered latex rubber molds at the 2010 edition of the Hobby Train Show at Scenic Express. Cool. So guys, keep those comments coming, and we'll see you again one last time, December 9th. I'll send out reminders, and I'm going to shut the recording off now, guys, and we'll get this recording out to all of you within the next couple of days. Thanks so much for showing up, guys. I'm going to send us all off the air. I appreciate it. We had, at the high point, guys, we had 52 people on the air. So I really appreciate that. I'd love to see at least half of you send me some photos so we can catch you next time. You guys take care. Have a great night, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Johnny.
Good night, all.
Take care. See you, Al.